Hey guys, Comic Boom here to talk about Doomsday Clock, and boy, are their variant covers great. We got the lithographic cover here, which is the lenticular cover, which with the Trinity symbols on it. We got the other covers here. The end is near, and the Superman floating and slowly being dissipated away. It looks like on the cover. Great covers, and then of course we've got the midnight release cover in the black and white. We got the pins. The Doomsday Clock pins, which I put on my cap and on my Superman shirt, and we got the comic shops giving away the lithographic nice black and white of Gary Frank. Guys, Doomsday Clock, just a little bit of background. It is basically the first of a 12-issue series put out by Jeff Johns, beautifully illustrated by Gary Frank, and it's the story of incorporating the influence that the Watchmen have had on the DC universe. This was teased way back in DC Rebirth, and guys, just so you know, you can read DC Rebirth and then read the 4 issues of The Button, and then you can basically go right into Doomsday Clock #1, and you won't be completely lost. You'll have some idea what's going on. The Doomsday Clock starts off basically showing us a world in complete chaos, a world perhaps disturbingly not unlike our own. It starts off with a view from above, and it sort of comes down to street level, and it's clear that there's a riot going on. And the words on the first page alone, the words that are being used to describe the world are extremely disturbing. Undeplorables, echo chamber, totalitarianism, bugs, cockroaches, maggots, kicking, screaming. We don't deserve it. Maybe the world should burn this time. Those are the phrases that's all on the first page. I mean, this is really a dark, dark world. And this is the world of The Watchmen. The Watchmen is a series that ended. It basically was a series where a character by the name of Adrian Veidt, who is known as Ozymandias, he basically created he created a false crisis of an alien invasion, and he, at the end of Watchmen, he basically blew up. He orchestrated the destruction of New York City. 3 million people died, and the world thought that they were being invaded by aliens. And thinking that the world was being invaded by aliens, it forced all the countries to come together to put aside their differences and sue for peace with each other. That's how it ended, and it sort of ended on this insane idea that sort of the bad guy, the guy that was ultimately revealed to be a cold-blooded murderer, was prepared to exterminate 3 million New Yorkers just to bring about world peace, and it appeared to have worked. That's what made Watchmen such a disturbing yet almost a profound revelation about the nature of humanity, what it takes to get us to wake up and to embrace each other and embrace peace. Sometimes it might take a very violent act. That's how Watchmen ended. Watchmen ended in the timeline of approximately 1986. What's interesting about this Doomsday #1 is that this opens up on November 22nd, 1992, or the narrator says maybe it's November 23rd. So the narrator's memory is not entirely clear. What's interesting about the date of November of 1992 is that is also the same month in our real world when where Superman died, where the issue 75 of Superman came out way back in November of 1992, and in that particular month, Superman died. So why is that particular month being quoted here, or being referenced here in Doomsday Clock? Well, in a newspaper article on the back, because at the back of this series, whole thing's beautifully illustrated. It has newspaper articles, and in one of the newspaper articles, it makes it clear that in the months following this fake alien invasion that was orchestrated by Ozymandias, by Adrian Veidt, Rorschach, who was killed at the end of Watchmen, his journal, which chronicled the events and exposed Adrian Veidt's plan, it was discovered, and eventually the truth came out in November of 1992 in the Watchmen world, and the truth came out, and Adrian Veidt's orchestrations and his actions in orchestrating that false alien invasion was exposed to the world just when he was on the brink of accomplishing world peace, of bringing peace between the Americans and the Russians in the Watchmen world, and it threw the world into chaos. And of course, he became the most wanted man in the Watchmen universe. What Doomsday #1 is that Adrian Veidt uses Rorschach to try to recruit two new members called Marionette and the Mime, to break them out of prison and to help him find Dr. Manhattan. Because at the end of Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan went off into the universe to try to really find a new world where he could just basically settle down. And he just basically disappeared into the cosmos. Where exactly he disappeared, we don't know. But of course, we suspect that Dr. Manhattan had something to do with corrupting the DC universe, or perhaps creating the aberration that we in the DC universe know as the New 52. And of course, with Rebirth, what did Dr. Manhattan have to do with the creation of the Rebirth DC universe? We're not sure. Is he a corrupting influence? Is he a good influence? Is he a bad influence? Well, what we know, regardless of anything, is that in the Watchmen universe, Ozymandias wants to try to find Dr. Manhattan because he believes that the only thing that can save the Watchmen universe now is Dr. Manhattan, which is ironic because Ozymandias in Watchmen series, he wanted to kill Dr. Manhattan. He wanted to orchestrate an alien invasion, and he knew that the only person that could stop him would be Dr. Manhattan, and so he orchestrated or attempted to kill Dr. Manhattan. He was unsuccessful in that attempt, but Dr. Manhattan at the end of the Watchmen series actually agreed with Adrian Veidt. He agreed that, you know, this works, this fake alien invasion, it is bringing the world together, it is orchestrating peace, and it would have worked too, except for the fact that Rorschach's journal, unbeknownst to Ozymandias, was in fact discovered because before he died, Rorschach made arrangements so that a reporter could find his journal, and the truth was ultimately known. Now, what's interesting about this is Ozymandias is apparently dying of cancer, presumably because of the exposure he had to Dr. Manhattan. So this has taken place in 1992. Of course, that is 6 years after the events of Watchmen, and they're looking for Dr. Manhattan to presumably save the world. And at the same time, just as all that's going on, Superman, it ends with showing Superman in bed with Lois Lane. And of course, it's Clark Kent, and he's having a nightmare. And Superman doesn't have nightmares, but he has a nightmare of his parents dying. And beside him on the table as he's sleeping and experiencing this nightmare is a book called Walden 2. And in our world, Walden 2 is a book that was written by behavioral psychologist B.F. Skinner. Walden 2 is a place where it's theorized that you can control people's behavior, and by doing so, you can actually create a utopia. The idea of it is that you can basically control behavior, and that in fact you can create a utopia by controlling behavior in such a way that the people don't even know that they're controlled. It's sort of a rejection of free will and a rejection of any idea of a spirit or a soul. That you can make everyone happy just by understanding behavior and manipulating the environment. And that's what Walden 2 was. What's interesting about that is Clark Kent is reading that book just at the same time where Dr. Manhattan, at the end of the Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan went off into the universe with the idea of sort of creating his own universe. So in a sense, Dr. Manhattan is the ultimate behavioral scientist. So the question that you're forced to ask is perhaps, did Dr. Manhattan create the DC universe, and are all of us actually, all the people in the DC universe, are they being controlled and manipulated behaviorally by Dr. Manhattan? Are they all basically a glorified Walden 2? It's all these questions that are arising, all in this first issue. There's a lot of questions here that are being asked. I love this first issue because it forces me to do other readings. But most of all, this is all in the book. Read every page. This isn't a 5-minute read. You know, take your time. Take your 15 to 20 minutes of time, read everything, read the newspaper articles at the end. This is a really good comic book, and really get into it. This is a gem of a comic book if you're a big fan of Watchmen. Now, having said that, it is a depressing, it starts off, this is a downer, it is depressing. Jeff Johns has put a lot of work into this. Whether or not this is going to be really exceptional as things goes on, we'll have to wait and see. But I got to tell you, with characters like the Marionette and Mime, which I understand are other Charlton characters, I'm not familiar with them, but this the Mime character, Marionette and the Mime, are the characters that Ozymandias is recruiting through the help of Rorschach to help find Dr. Manhattan. with that, the whole sequence, most of the book is Rorschach breaking them out of prison. And the character of Mime is my favorite because he imagines, to him everything's about a performance. He's a mute, he can't talk, and he's very much an actor, and he pretends. And you got to read it. It's a it's so beautifully illustrated. Gary Frank, the art here is fantastic. The facial expressions that he puts on these characters is really second to none. This is really good stuff. So this is also a replication, just like Watchmen, in terms of the 9-panel grid. And I know, guys, we're seeing a lot more of these 9-panel grids all over the place, particularly brought back in all their glory. Of course, you see a lot of the 9-panel grids. Tom King's bringing it back in Miracle Man. And this is a replication of the same narrative style that Alan Moore did on Watchmen. I am impressed. You know, I want to give a shout out to Professor Bill of Comic Book University. I always love listening to his YouTube videos. He's fantastic at giving the 3 to 8 minutes synopsis on these things. I agree with him that we got to be a little cautious here. This comic book is stating that everything really is a lie. Society is falling apart in the Watchmen universe. What of it? So what are we supposed to make of this? I like the questions it poses. Because I'm such a huge Watchmen fan, I was more impressed with this than I realized upon a second read and a third read, because more and more questions are really coming to the surface. And I got to give credit to Jeff Johns. He's making me ask questions I never thought I'd be asking, and all in one issue. I'm getting something more out of this every time I read it. Even the newspaper articles, there's gems in the back that I'm really reading. And I probably the most one thing that I almost, this was so well paced that by the time I got to the end, and all of a sudden you see Clark Kent in bed, because all of a sudden there's an appearance of Superman. Because I've always seen these two universes as being separate, for some reason here they are. They need to, you know, we just leave a scene with Ozymandias with Adrian Veidt saying we need to find Dr. Manhattan to save our world, and you know they wonders where is he. And then the next scene, it shows Superman. I mean, the sequence is just great. Dr. Manhattan's last words to Adrian Veidt was, "I'm leaving this galaxy for one less complicated." That's what he said at the end of Watchmen. And Adrian Veidt says, "This is our mission, all of us. We need to find John." And by John, he means Dr. Manhattan, wherever he's retreated to. So the question is, where is Dr. Manhattan retreated to? And then they say that just when they show where has John retreated to, and then the next scene they show Clark Kent sleeping. So you have to ask, is it possible that Superman is Dr. Manhattan? That Dr. Manhattan himself created a universe for himself, and he made himself Superman? Is it possible? I mean, that's potentially one of the implications here. I don't think that's true. I don't think that's the case, simply because I know that at some point Dr. Manhattan and Superman are going to meet. And I think that that's been pretty much an open secret. But the way that this is laid out, if it wasn't for the internet and the fact that I know better, that's one of the questions I'd be asking myself right now. Wouldn't that be cool? Since Dr. Manhattan has the power to create his own universe, that maybe he's created his own universe and he's made himself Superman, and now he's sleeping beside the created love of his life, who is the Silk Spectre, but now she's in the form of Lois Lane, and he's Clark Kent. It's just one of the things that makes you think. But this is really done. Well done. Rorschach in this issue is a black person. He's not the Rorschach. He's not the redhead that we know from the original Watchmen series. We don't know his origins yet. We don't know how he was created, but we do know that the Rorschach character in this particular incarnation is he doesn't have as good as memory as the Rorschach as the original Rorschach. We know that his mind is he's a little bit spacey. He doesn't remember, his recollection seems to be a little fuzzy, but it's teased by Ozymandias that Rorschach is very powerful, but we never really get to see him use his powers here. So it's interesting. Wow. This is a series worth picking up. It's whet my appetite. I'm really curious to see where this is going to go. So guys, pick up Watchmen #1. It's well worth your money. If you're wondering what to get somebody as maybe as a Christmas present, buy them a Watchmen graphic novel along with the first 2 issues of Doomsday Clock, because the second issue should be out next month in December. This has the makings of another classic right off the bat. Perhaps I'm being a little bit premature. Shout out to Professor Bill, and I'm gonna put his link down there. You guys should check out his reviews. I always do, because he's always he's great at giving the quick synopsis, and I highly recommend that you subscribe to him if you can. And in the meantime, guys, thanks for watching, and Comic Boom out.